Hello, everyone. It is Monday, the 26th of August, and Chris Jack, we have a good Rangers performance to talk about. It's been a while. Welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us as ever. Sorry we're a little bit late. Chris's laptop decided to go through its regular update just before 1:30. They must have known we were trying to be on time as ever. Lots to talk about today. We're going to get through a little bit of Saturday's game, or a lot of Saturday's game, a better performance for Rangers as they beat Ross County 6-0. Philippe Clement has certainly built up expectation with his comments in the press conference as we enter the final week of the transfer window as well, Chris. But a better performance to go into that final week of the window on the back of. And listen, Ross County had been beaten by Spartans the week before. They're clearly not a team that, or unlikely a team that's going to challenge at the top of the Scottish Premiership this season. But I guess just your initial thoughts on what was a better performance to dissect than we've been accustomed to over the past few weeks.
The laptop clearly knows it's going to be a very busy week of transfer deadline week and Old Firm week. It knows there's lots on the go, so it's making sure it's primed and ready to go, which is good enough on a Monday morning. It's a Monday morning of, as you say, a positive Rangers performance. It's been some time since we've had one like that. I thought Rangers really comfortable, really dominant. Deserved the victory, obviously, and deserved, I think, to win by that margin. There's been games previously they've deserved to get the 3 points, but they've only won by 2. It was an afternoon where they played that well. They created that many chances. There was enough positives there that it did have a feel of a 5 or 6 type afternoon, and thankfully, Rangers were able to turn a dominant performance into a dominant scoreline. Not something that they have been able to do that often, not just under this manager, but in previous managers. So lots to be encouraged about, with the usual caveat of it was only Ross County, and Ross County first time in this season were not very good. It has to be said, that not their best performance, and Rangers, that has to be taken into account from a Rangers perspective. But as myself and Stevie spoke about post-match, if they had only won 1-0, people would have been giving them a hard time. So when they win 6, you have to give them praise without going OTT on it, without getting the red, white and blue bunting out and the champagne on ice. You have to be positive where there's positives to be found.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. William says, no bank holiday for the Rangers, review top professionals. Only Derek Williams, so don't forget that he is enjoying himself down in England on a bank holiday. But lots to talk about, as you say, Chris. Ben Davies is now departed for Birmingham City on loan, as you wrote last week at some point. Clement obviously spoke quite a lot in his press conference about Cyril Dessers, about Rabbi Matondo, about the expectation of a busy week. So do get your comments in. We'll get to as many as possible and try and tackle the issues that you want to talk about. Kiss has announced transfers there as well, Chris. So that's a sign of things to come this week. Let's speak a little bit more about the performance. Chris, Neil saying from back to front on Saturday, thought Rangers are fantastic. All the players that are criticised were fantastic. Danilo looks like he's bulked up. Alexander Campbell saying much similar sentiment, much better showing. Main thing is the Rangers took most of the chances they created. Hopefully 4 new first team starters to make the team better, and a possible result on Sunday. We'll get to transfers, Chris, but a little bit more on the game on Saturday. You and Stevie were there. I agree with you. I thought it was much better. There was some, if you looked at that St Johnstone game, I thought there was a lot of promise and good back to front play, but this time Rangers had the clinical edge in Rabbi Matondo, which isn't something that we've said all that often since he came to the club. Cyril Dessers scored his I think it's his 4th and 5th goal of the season already, and there was that I guess more of an overall feeling of, okay, here's what Clement is trying to do with the fullbacks on either side, playing with 2 wingers. On the right, you had Tavernier narrow a lot of the game. You had Cherney wide. On the left, it was Chefty, who I thought was really good again and catalysed that first goal with one of the runs from deep that we spoke about over the course of last week on the podcast. Rabbi Matondo adding the finishing touch a couple of times on the left-hand side. So on the performance, Chris, but specifically on Matondo and Dessers, they're 2 players who at the start of the window, most people would have said, get rid of them and get rid of them quickly. Matondo is only 1 game in, but it's probably an example of, okay, here's what he can do. There's still questions about whether he can do it consistently, of course. because he hasn't so far, because this was only a home game. But certainly a more encouraging Saturday with that in mind. And on Dessers as well, as we discussed last week, from being a player who was probably one that a lot of people would have sold, his goals are now so important for Rangers. And I saw a tweet, forgive me because I can't remember from who, showing the goals scored by Rangers players over the course of this year, and Dessers is way out in front, ahead of anyone behind, and very quickly he's become one of Clermont's most important players, hasn't he?
On Matondo, I spoke to Stevie and Derek on the show, I think it was Friday morning, and it was a case of Barrie is one of the guys who should be allowed to let go. Rangers have a lot of money tied up in him, fee, wages, and we spoke about his inconsistencies, we spoke about some of the good points. There's obviously bad points to his game as well, and the consensus between us all and a lot of the comments on the show was he's one that can be allowed to move on. Rangers can do better. 24 hours later, he goes and puts in a really impressive performance, gets his goals, gets assists, looks a real threat. And on that form, you would keep him within the squad. On that form, he probably starts at Parkhead this weekend. But you mentioned inconsistency there. That's the thing with Barrie Matondo. He has these performances in him. He has those moments in him, like the European goals, like the Old Firm goal. He's capable. But is he capable regularly enough to be a key player for Rangers and to justify the finances? Or does the manager still think, yes, he's a moments player, but we need somebody who can deliver a bit more often? Over the next couple of days, I'm going to try and move him on. If you take him on what the manager said post-match, it was a case of the players who are not in the squad are the more likely ones to move on. Obviously, Ben Davies was then confirmed within 24 hours. Matondo, I still think is on that cusp. If he stays, he will provide these moments. Will he do it often enough? If he moves on, can Rangers get someone who is more consistent, who is more available, who's more reliable, both in fitness terms and in form terms? So I think Matondo is still really one to watch over the next couple of days. Big Cyril is, by all accounts, going absolutely nowhere. Even if Rangers do get an offer that they think matches his value, he seems really happy here. The manager, again, like I referenced that on Saturday, and he's such an important player for the team and for the squad now. It's now a bigger call to not sell him than it is to sell him, or vice versa. Sorry, Rangers actually now can't afford to sell Cyril Dessers, and who would have said that anytime over the last 12 months or so, because he's reliable in terms of always being available, and he's now reliable in terms of goals as well. And he's now become a guy that Rangers is one of the first names on the team sheet. If you were to sell him, do you know that his replacement will come in and will be available the amount of games that he's been available, be able to play the amount of minutes that he's played? And so far this season, will his replacement, if there was to be one, be able to score the same number of goals? So yes, he has a price, but it's a big decision now for the manager to sell him. As by all accounts, he seems really happy here. We've both spoken to him a number of times. Spoke to him out in Berlin after the family, and he looked every inch a guy who was confident heading into his second season. He spoke about being in a better place. He's obviously not had to make the move and have that settling in adjustment period. I think the club is in a better place now than it was 12 months ago under Michael Beale. So he seems happy here now. Something maybe will come up in the next couple of days, but he thinks financially or football-wise or lifestyle-wise, this is better for me. But it would now be a surprise if he moves on.
Yeah, it would be. We'll get to a few comments specifically about Matondo. King Charles Spaniel says, we hope Matondo stays, should be a starter alongside Chefty. James saying, Matondo had good movement, getting to the front post for one of his goals. Kenneth, Matondo never ever gets a run of 3 games in the starting 11. And Stephen kind of agreeing with what you're saying, Chris, on Dessers. Like, Danilo looked better off the bench. He got his goal. We'll come to that because it was a really nice moment for him. But Dessers clearly needs to start up front going to Parkhead because there's no other fit and firing options behind him. Just on Matondo, for me, one of the main differences in this performance was Chefty. If you look at that first goal, Adam and I spoke about it on the Tactics podcast last week. And as I said to Adam at the start of that show, Chris, we cover topics that Derek tells me are too boring or no one's interested in on the morning briefing. But if you look at what Chefty brings to the team, again, we've discussed it last week, he can progress the ball individually. That means you don't need other players to drop down. That means you can then attract other opposition players, which creates space elsewhere. And for me, that's a big difference. Again, not to single a player out, but you look at the difference in a player like Borna Barisic compared to Jeffrey at left back, and how one really suits Clement's style of play and how one suits a different style of play, and was really good under Steven Gerrard, but it was a suitability for Clement's football, the type of football he wants to play. You're seeing it a little bit more, I think, with especially the wide dynamics getting sorted out, round pegs and round holes out wide. We still must be in single figures for the amount of times that Clement's had two out-and-out wingers playing on either side and two fullbacks who can go either way. Now, on Saturday, you saw James Tavernier play pretty narrow and Cherney wide. You saw Matondo play narrow at points and also go wide, with Chefty able to go both ways. But just to spend a bit more time discussing them, I thought it was quite similar to what you saw Abdallah Sima do at points under Clement, where he was kind of that second striker from the left-hand side. Because Matondo scored his 2 goals and he got his 2 assists, but he also hit the bar. He had that header, which was narrowly offside, I think, on the replay that went just wide on the post. But I guess that's an important point to stress as well, Chris, that it's only Ross County at home, and I'm not jumping to any definitive conclusions, but you are seeing more of what Clement wants to do. He needs more quality in this week. We expect more quality to arrive, and that should enable a little bit more of this style that we're starting to see to bleed through into the games. And because that simply at points hasn't been there, especially at the end of last season, but also at the end of last season, instead of having a winger and a fullback on the left, you had a striker and a right fullback, or a striker and a left back in Barisic who wasn't suited. So that point of a squad moving more to the type of football that Clement wants to play, I think is a really important one.
It is, and it's something, he mentioned it, I think he actually referenced it again post-match on Saturday, about this team will be better come October, November. And he did say, I know people might not have liked that statement, because everybody says, well, Rangers have to be good now, and they did have to be good now. They had to be better at Tynecastle. They had to be better in the European games. Now, those results and those performances cannot be taken back and redone once we get to October and everybody is hopefully fit and firing. So Rangers had to be better earlier, but if they can continue to be better from here on in, then that certainly bodes well. I know we spoke, I think, after Tynecastle, certainly in those early days of the season, about the style of play and what is Clement actually looking to do. I think Saturday was more like it, that there was a more identifiable look about Rangers. Now, as I said at the top of the show, it's only Ross County. It's a game Rangers were expected to win, a game they were expected to have a lot of the ball, a game they were expected to dominate in terms of the chances and the goals. They did. A couple of shaky moments defensively that I think still have to be worked on. There's definitely room for improvement there. Hopefully that will be solved by some movement in the transfer market as well. So very, very far from the finished article. But as I said earlier on, if it had gone badly, they would have rightly have taken all the criticism that it deserved. When it goes well, you have to then give them due praise where it's merited, but within the context of where this team and where this squad still is, still a long, long way to go.
Yeah, you're right, because there was a few moments. I mean, the save that Butland makes early on is from a distance, but there was still a few kind of transition moments that Ross County had, Chris, which I think is important to mention. Right, let's get on to what everyone wants to talk about this week, which is transfers. We can come back to the game if needed. Colin says Clement said he expected more incomings this week, which is promising. Badly need another winger for me at number 10 and a commanding centre back. Not much to ask for. I agree with Colin, Chris. The areas, and we'll talk about Ben Davies moving out on loan, self-explanatory, but Rangers will aim to bring in a centre back between now and the end of the window. A centre back that is, again, maybe a little bit more suited to what Clement wants to do, and you see that with Robin Proper, just stylistically, how he's maybe more of a suit for Clement than Goldson was. The wide areas, not least because of Oscar Cortez's injury, but that is, you probably need someone who can play on both sides, certainly on the right-hand side and the midfield. Tom Lawrence had a good game. He's not had many this season, I don't think, and there's still a lot of questions for me as to the configuration of that midfield next week. I would still go probably Diomande, Sterling and Barron. There's the right back question in the Old Firm games of Tavernier up against Maida, which we've discussed before, Chris. But it was quite a straight comment from Clement on transfers, wasn't it? We do still expect Rangers to be busy over the course of the next week until the window shuts on Friday. And again, despite the fact that they've had a good Saturday, we know that they need to. The three areas that Colin addresses for me: centre-back, someone in the wide areas, and in the midfield, whether that be someone who can play deeper and let Diamadi push up. I'd probably rather see someone come in at the top of midfield who's a natural fit there. That's three areas which Rangers really need to prioritise and should over the course of the next 5 days.
I think if you're given, if you're asking me what's the dream scenario in terms of incomings, I'm looking for 4, looking for a centre-back, I'm looking for two midfielders and another option that can play both sides wide. I think they need a bit of depth in those two midfield areas, need another option in there, even though Nico Raskin is now moving back to fitness. We still like to see another one. And number 10, we've spoken about it over the course of the window. Number 10 needs a huge upgrade. We expect Hadji and Cantwell to move on. The manager has referenced that often enough about the need for both of them to move on. Rangers need to then go and invest that money saved in an effective, reliable number 10. Tom Lawrence was better on Saturday. I doubt you'll get many people with a clamour for him to start against Celtic. And there's a difference in the type of games where I think Tom Lawrence is going to be suited. He cannot be the starting option. He cannot be the first choice option in that area for your Ross Counties at Ibrox, for St Johnstone, for some of the other perhaps less tricky away games. Tom Lawrence will be able to do a job over the course of the season for Parkhead, for Celtic at Ibrox, for your cup semis, for your cup finals, hopefully for your European games. You're needing an upgrade there. Someone who's more mobile, who has greater stamina, and who also provides more in terms of assists and goals. And I say that on the back of Tom Lawrence actually playing well and ticking ticking those boxes. But I say there's levels to the games where I think he's going to be effective. So if Rangers could get those 4 in, I think that would represent a good end to the week. It would certainly give everyone a boost heading into the Old Firm game. But as the manager spoken about, as we've spoken about often enough, it depends on what can they do going out. Now you're now expecting a centre half to come in on the back of the Ben Davies news, so that one should be fairly self-explanatory. It's what else can they do ahead of that?
Yeah, Rangers had been in talks with the camp of Thiago Gouveia, I think it's pronounced, earlier in the window. Benfica winger, that he actually injured his shoulder at the weekend. That was looking less likely regardless, because his kind of status had changed in the Benfica squad at the start of the season. Regardless, hadn't played that many minutes at the start of the season. Also in talks with a couple other clubs across Europe as well. But it is that wide area that is alongside the central midfield position, Chris. As you mentioned, that Rangers needs quality in. At the moment, you'd be looking at that number 9 position and saying, right, if Dessers is going to stay, Danilo's getting back to fitness, and obviously you've got Hamza Igamani to come in at some point. Starting that position looks better than it did a couple of weeks ago. Just a word for Danilo's goal, Chris. You obviously spoke to him over pre-season, and it was an emotional moment for him. It wasn't only the fact that he'd been out, I guess, since December, when he injured his knee away at Hearts and went off, was able to walk off, I think, if memory serves me correctly, and you thought he'd be back soon. As it materialised, wouldn't see him until the following season. He'd also had that impact injury to his face where he fractured the cheekbone, had to work with a psychologist to come back from that, which was because it was clearly a pretty traumatising injury. If you look at just the pictures from that game when he actually scored off the back of that header, didn't he? All that to say, he had a really difficult first campaign. It's taken him time to get back into the squad at the start of the season. Clement took Dessers off even when he was on 2 goals, and I think they had a little chat about that at the side of the pitch. But that was a moment that I know Danilo mentioned to you when you did that interview with him, and I'm sure will have gotten through a lot of days of rehab over the start of this year.
No, I think you had to be pleased, even just on a personal basis. You had to be chuffed for him. As you've outlined there, it's been a long 7-8 months for him, but a long road back. In the interview, he spoke about spoke about the days where there was no progress. He spoke about the darker times where you go in and you go through your work and you go back in the next day and you maybe regress slightly, or you have not taken the step forward. And we're not talking of a week after week. We're not talking big steps. It's marginal gains that he was looking for every single day. And there had to be a light at the end of that tunnel. There had to be a goal for him to work towards. And the first one was getting back fit and getting back on the grass. The second one's then getting back in the squad, getting back to playing minutes. And the ultimate one would be get back scoring goals. Now, it's only one. I thought he took it well. Found himself in the right place at the right time, put it away nicely. You could see what it meant to him. Hopefully there's going to be plenty more to come from him. But just because he is now back and he is getting more minutes and he's got that goal, don't expect the manager to suddenly rush him through the next few weeks.
Yeah.
I think we'll still be very, very careful with him. Again, that puts a lot of pressure on Dessers, but we think that he can handle that from a physical and mental point of view. I think we still don't really know how good Danilo was, how good he is, how good he can be. There was flashes in that first season, but as you said, really the injuries came at really bad times. Johnson one just as he looked as if he was getting somewhere. He's then out for a couple of weeks and playing with a mask, and then also the injury at heart. So we still don't really know how good he's going to be post-injury or how good he was pre-injury, because we've just not seen enough. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks, certainly the next couple of months, we will get more of a chance to see what he can actually bring to this Rangers forward line. I think it will be different to what Dessers brings. That's no bad thing, having guys who are slightly different in terms of their style and what they can bring. And hopefully with some proper competition for Dessers, that will improve him. If Danilo then feels that he is, again, that's something he spoke about post-match on Saturday, that relationship that the two of them have got. Yes, they are competing, but they're competing for the right reasons, and they're helping each other for the right reasons as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert agreeing with you, Chris, says 4 new players, number 10, a midfielder, a central defender, and a right back. Stuart Ballantyne, is proper going to be fit for the game on Sunday. We'll, of course, have loads of coverage coming up to the Old Firm game on Sunday, which is they're always big. This feels extra big. But Clement did speak about that pre or post match. Chris, I believe he said that proper was
Friday mentioned he'll be 200% ready for this one. So obviously not in the squad on Saturday. If he's going to be 200%, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah, it's exactly 200% would be some performance. A lot of comments coming in about the game at the weekend, and we'll continue to build up to that throughout the course of the week. Chris, I just want to get your thoughts on that right back position. I just noticing in the comments a lot of chat about Tavernier up against Maeda at Parkhead, and that ties into the conversation of where Rangers need to strengthen, because hypothetically, if Rangers were to bring in, let's say they were to bring in a number 6 and he's to play alongside Connor Barron and Mohamed Diamandi in that midfield 3 at the weekend with Dujon Sterling at right back, people will probably be quite comfortable with that. But can you foresee a situation where, and we know there's been a lot of talk about James Tavernier's future this summer, so much so that there was a public bid, and that's not happened that often over the past number of years. The noises about players' future from Clement has been pretty black and white, effectively saying that everyone has a price. Again, we've not really heard that in previous summers about James Tavernier. But can you really foresee a situation where he doesn't play at Parkhead? I thought he was better at the weekend, playing in a slightly different role. Dujon Sterling obviously has that slight injury, but he's able to kind of play through it, and he has to play somewhere. But I guess you've just got to, if you're Clement, work out where are his qualities going to be best utilised at Parkhead at the weekend.
The only way for me that Tav doesn't play on Saturday is if he's injured or he's sold. If he's fit and he's available, he plays. It's too big a call to put your faith in your captain over the course of the summer. The manager's spoken about him, how he's part of the plans, and then drop him for the biggest game of the season so far. Yes, his form has not been great. Yes, there's scar tissue there, and that's safe to say, from old firms and certainly from previous old firms for Tav. But it's different dropping your captain than it is someone else. No, it's a I think there's been times previously where there's been individual decisions that the manager has made in these games on selection. Like Cantwell or Lawrence is my big talking point in these games previously. It's a bigger thing to go and drop your captain, and it would open up so many other questions, so many other avenues for people to really kind of explore. It's just not going to happen. If somehow he's sold in the next 4 days, that obviously changes it, and Rangers then have to go and bring in another right back. But if Tav's here and he's fit, doesn't pick up anything in training this week, he's going to play. And any suggestion otherwise, I think they're looking for something that's just not going to be there. Yes, we believe that Sterling is more than good enough to get in and play at right back. If they were to sign another midfielder, it would potentially open up that avenue. But can you imagine the questions the manager's going to get pre-match, the coverage of Tav sitting on the Parkhead bench as the game's going on, the questions he then gets post-match, how that then feeds into pressers afterwards? It's just not going to happen. Tav, if he's here and he's fit, he plays on Sunday.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. That is most likely what happens. Dujon Sterling, in proper Dujon Sterling fashion, of course, had to play in more than one position at the weekend and ended the game at left centre back, given that injury. Given that injury to Liam Balogun, again, that's not believed to be anything serious. Some sort of way fell, I think, Chris, if memory serves me correctly. I should have checked that detail, but Clermont, one of the many details to come out of Clermont's press conference at the weekend. If I was to push you on a starting lineup at the moment, and obviously we're a few days away from it, not going to get your predicted teams yet, how many new signings could Rangers have in the starting 11? I think probably none, because that is not Clermont hasn't tended to throw people in that quickly. Maybe it's different if they've had a full pre-season. I would expect it to be, if the squad as it is at the moment is what Rangers were to travel across with, and we expect them to be busy in terms of incomings before that. You're looking at Tavernier, Suter, Proper, and Chefty. I think a midfield three of Diomande, Sterling, and Barrie. And that's a midfield that would give people more confidence in the midfield that Rangers have played Old Firm games with in recent months, Chris, because we saw what happened with that midfield at the end of last season when Celtic won that battle pretty consistently. And then you're looking at Cherney, Matondo, and Dessers across the front line. Any discrepancies in there that you disagree with me on?
No, I don't think so. You mentioned there about new signings, and none, unless someone signs today or tomorrow. I don't see anyone starting on Sunday, because the manager's that's not his style. Now we think back to the Cherney debate around about the European game, and it was just not something that he was willing to do, to take that risk. So I don't believe that he'll, unless somebody signs today or tomorrow and they're able to have a couple of training sessions. I just don't see him taking that risk. I think he will go with the players that have come through these last couple of weeks, the players that played well at the weekend there. It wouldn't be nice if there were a couple of new signings on the bench. I think that, again, it would give everyone a boost. If you then need someone to go on and give you 20 minutes or so, get a look at them. Now that would be good. I think it would, even just from a perception point of view, if the squad was slightly beefed up, again, something me and Stevie spoke about at the weekend, the bench looked a bit thin at the weekend there.
Yeah.
You've obviously got Ridvan to come back in, you've got Raskin to come back in, got Cortes to come back in. If these guys are then fit, and you can get 2, 3, 4, if we're going to be optimistic in terms of the signings, the squad then looks a bit better, as well as the starting 11 looking a bit better. And I think the manager kind of touched on that post-match as well. There will be so much focus on the business that Rangers do and how that impacts Sunday, and obviously so much focus on Sunday. But he has to build a squad for the other 30-odd games this season. He has to build a squad to get Rangers through the rest of this campaign at home and abroad. So there's a lot will be riding on this week, but I don't think he'll place too much or any more emphasis than has to be on how things go on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and Ben Davies, obviously we should cover that as well before we cover Chris. Only on loan, no obligation. The important thing for Rangers has been getting high earners off the wage bill, and obviously Davies isn't totally off the wage bill because he's not leaving the club permanently, but it seems to be one that moved relatively quickly last week. Someone who Rangers have been open to letting go purely because of the money that he's on compared to, I guess, his role in the pecking order under Clement at centre-back. Robin Propper is coming to play that left centre-back role at the moment. Still expect Rangers to move for a centre-back before now and now close of play on Friday. Just someone that it's never really worked out for him at Rangers, Chris, and he's got good qualities and he's had injuries at unfortunate moments, but also just never really grabbed that position. And I think physicality is something that certainly I've liked him in the past, especially his first season. I thought he was quite heavily criticised because if you look at the number of errors that other centre-backs had made leading to goals compared to Davies, I don't think he was high and away a sole offender in that regard. But you never looked at him, I thought, and thought that for the money spent on him and his role in the squad, he's going to make that left centre-back position his own and really stamp his authority there. He's played a lot in the kind of middle leagues in England, League One and Championship. Obviously earned that move to Liverpool. It's a good move for him and would expect that to be a move before another move later down the line.
Mm-hmm. I think that it was a physical aspect that always troubled me with Ben Davies. He just didn't look commanding enough, didn't look physical enough for the Scottish game. And that's not to say every centre half up here has to be 6'6" tall. And I was going to use a swear word there to say how someone was built.
Think of the monetization, Chris. Come on, we're 31 minutes into the podcast.
Davies, he didn't suit in terms of a style. Never looked overly comfortable at Rangers. Like you mentioned, the injuries there never really got going. I don't think the fans ever really took to him. Quite a nice guy to speak to. Actually, it was interesting when we got him after the Ajax game. He said it can take you 2 seasons to settle in at Rangers, and that was almost a problem because you just don't get 2 seasons to settle in at Rangers. That's just not the city. That's just not the club. I think the level that he's been at previously outside Liverpool, obviously, I think that's his level. He should do very well, I'd imagine, in League One. I think he'll go down there and be a really accomplished defender for Birmingham. Hopefully he does well. And I certainly offer him no ill wishes. He's always been good to deal with from our point of view. But from a playing point of view, he's just never really been at the level. And I think if you look at Rangers' recruitment in the last few years, he almost, without being too harsh on him, he sums up a lot of the things that's been bad. It's players coming in on big wages from England, big reputations, and never really getting it, and Rangers then having to find a way to get them back out the building again. So no, a signing that's just not really worked, and I'd imagine we have seen the last of him in a Rangers jersey.
Very diplomatically done, Chris. Well done. Enjoyed that. No, none at all. Not in sight. Listen, well, thank you to everyone for joining us. We're going to leave it there. Loads of coverage to come on the Rangers review for you this week, in particular of all weeks. It's the final week of the transfer window. Lots to build up for Sunday's Old Firm game, and you can get all of the best coverage over here on the Rangers review on our YouTube page and on the website as well. Links to subscribe if you've not done so are in the comments below. Remember to subscribe on YouTube as well if you watch us there every morning and you don't subscribe. That really helps us as well. So do give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed Chris and I's Rangers musings this morning, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for free as well. But until then, we'll be back tomorrow morning. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Monday and speak to you soon. Bye for now.